Hello and welcome to another episode of a Quality Podcast. My name is Enos. I am a QA consultant with Quality and Support. I am your host and I am joined today by Eugene. Eugene, thank you so much for being here today, taking the time out of what I know is a very busy schedule. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what you do and your relationship with QA?
Highness, pleasure as always. I'm head of product for Loris. We are a natural language AI platform that augments conversational data with intents, sentiment, outcome, how customers feel about different aspects of your product and company. And then we create this metadata, it can be used for many things. One of them is quality assurance, other
Hmm.
is just insights and decision support, or kind of how do you get to data-driven decisions in CX.
Hmm.
Also, agent training. You know, data is magical. Once you have
It
it,
is.
it's not just one use.
Hmm.
So that's the company, and I've been in technology for I don't know over 20 years in engineering roles, data science roles, product roles, uh, various industries, but natural language, how people work with machines and customer support was always kind of a connecting thread. And in the past couple of years, the changes that new technologies like, well, everybody, like, of course, you didn't hear about ChatGPT, right? It's just this like
No, never heard of
obscure thing that,
it.
right? So since it became kind of so noisy, but it's real. Uh,
Hmm.
Technology enables new possibilities that
Right.
will affect everything in CX, from chatbots to how QA is done, to how self-service documentation, workforce management, everything. However, it's very important to understand what is real and what is a bit more kind of science fiction like hype.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talked about before we hopped onto this recording is you mentioned that you've been using ChatGPT to do QA, is what you said. Can you tell me a little bit more about that because I find it incredibly interesting.
Yes, so I've been playing with it quite a lot. Um, so once GPT and all the large language models appeared, there was almost like a new activity that got this name of prompt engineering, right? Because
Hmm.
you're not training machine learning model, which how it used to work. The machine learning model, let's say ChatGPT, exists, right? You can
Right.
talk to it, not retrain it. I mean, OpenAI owns it, it develops it. If you wanted to develop your own, it would actually seriously cost millions of dollars to train it on all language available on the internet. So I'm not doing that. However, it responds to prompts,
Hmm.
and how you prompts basically instructions that you give it, and coming up with the right instructions is very interesting. So I've been playing a lot with kind of trying to imagine, well, okay, how do you do QA usually? You have a scorecard, you have questions, right? Did the
Right.
agent do this? Did the agent address customers' negative feelings, positive feelings? Did the customer blame did the agent blame the customer at any point, right? That's all about effective communications and empathy. And then, of
Right.
course, you have line items around following policy, product knowledge, following process, right? And because, among our clients, like we have, like they shared a lot of scorecards and a lot of conversational data with us, I
Right.
started to creating prompts and saying something like that. Here is the following is a transcript of a chat between a customer and support agent. And then did the agent, and then insert line item,
Right.
just see what it says.
Hmm.
And interestingly enough, in a lot of cases, ChatGPT had very good judgment. So, for example,
Wow.
uh, did the agent use a reasonable opening statement, closing statement, address negative emotions, positive emotions, even things like did the agent use concise language, right? Or did the agent, that was one of my favorites actually, um, did the agent made exaggerated promises? like, oh, this will never
Interesting.
happen again, right? Which I actually saw in some of the scorecards.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT was able to return with very reasonable answers. Then I keep tweaking the prompts. Okay, so first of all, give me the binary answer, like yes or no.
Hmm.
But then give me a quote. Where did you find it, right? Because with ChatGPT, it can be very serious bullshitter. I hope it's okay to say that.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, so asking it for like, how do you know that? Like, show
Right.
me where you found it. It's very important. And also provide a description, almost like a comment, for how would you do it better. And
Oh, wow.
it was really bad. It was really, really good. However, uh, so it's very important to understand where to trust it and where not to trust it. So
Right.
my guiding principle is this. So like imagine that ChatGPT is this thing that lives in a box. It has no idea what external world looks like.
Hmm.
It lives in the universe of language, basically, right? Yes, it is very complicated, but you could say that what ChatGPT and similar models do, because they absorbed all language in the world, when they know how to complete what's the next word, basically, right? It's
Right,
like,
right,
oh,
right.
we complete each other's, well, sandwiches or sentences, depend.
Yeah.
So um
Depending on whether or not you're a Disney princess. Yes.
exactly, yes. Um so uh my guiding principle is this: trusting ChatGPT. And whenever I say ChatGPT, it's really ChatGPT and similar technologies. I'll just use ChatGPT for brevity.
Yeah.
Trusting its judgment about the real world. Let's be dramatic, will get you killed. Meaning that you cannot trust the judgment, right? Like you
Right,
can't
right.
ask, even math questions. It sometimes does. It makes unpredictable, silly mistakes. Describing a shape and then asking if is this table round or square. It's like things that for a 5-year-old are nothing. It it can get wrong,
Hmm.
and the problem is it can get it unpredictably wrong because if you know every machine learning makes mistakes, but let's say you convinced yourself that it's right in 90% of cases, you're okay. Here you don't know what will happen, right? And
Got you.
unbelievable. However, trusting its judgment about language, I am getting more and more confidence is that it's actually warranted because it lives in this universe of language, right? So asking questions about sentiment and did the agent address feelings, uh, it's actually pretty good.
So, obviously, AI is rising within the QA space, notably with Loris adding a QA feature fairly recently. How would you negate for those weird, silly mistakes when you're relying on an AI to do some of the bulk work for you? Because we all know that QA can take a lot of your resources and a lot of time if you have to do everything manually. You never get up to 100%. AI allows you to do that, to do 100% of the conversations. Um, but then still, how do you negate for the 10% that's gonna fall through the cracks, so to say?
If you know that it's 10%, you're lucky, right? But let me tell you, okay, so here's how I would do a really bad auto QA product.
Hmm.
I would just hype it up and say, well, you know what? Give me your scorecard and I will send question by question to ChatGPT, and it will be yes no, and then
Magic.
add up numbers, magic, unicorns, and unicorns
Rain,
and
rainbows.
rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah.
Exactly, yes. So, however, why? What? Well, I mean, it sounds great, right?
Hmm.
Well, you have to talk about cost, right? Because every call to ChatGPT costs you something, but
Yeah.
I think we could deal with it. So that would be a really bad idea because without knowing what those line items in the scorecard are, you don't know because on some items it would do brilliantly, and on some items it would probably go really bad.
Right.
So, like, what actually? So I think is kind of a smarter approach is to have some subset of line items that you tested on. For
Hmm.
example, like what we are working on right now is, well, since every scorecard has this half that talks about effective communication and empathy, we actually working on creating kind of a standardized empathy, or call it like, good conversation list
Right.
scorecard. Test every line item, understand performance of ChatGPT or whatever we're going to use, and then I can guarantee that, okay, it's not wrong more than X%. Okay, so, but and sorry, this is like a very long answer to your question.
That's
Apologies, but
okay.
I think the point is that you can't delegate quality assurance 100% to the machine.
Yeah. I mean,
Because
this is something that I've said to you before. It's something I said in a previous episode as well. Like, we don't want to rely on an AI to determine whether or not we're having human enough conversations. That's a given, right? Um, no, I am both really excited about AI in the space because I know that it's just going to enable people doing quality assurance to actually do the job effectively rather than trying to keep up with the number of reviews that are needed in order to have a good sample size. But I'm also a little bit worried that, it might make people a little bit lazy if that's the right approach to it. Because if a machine is checking it for me, I don't have to go through all of these reviews. That's cool. I'm not going to have to, is there a way within Loris to do a human spot check then?
no, absolutely. Actually, for us, it's very important to avoid kind of common mistakes, like
Hmm.
bad mistakes that AI makes. There is this whole kind of area of research called like like safe AI, fair AI, right? Because imagine deploying a model that approves or denies loan applications,
Hmm.
and then discovering that, I know, like it takes race in account. And
Yeah.
actually, very interesting cases, right? Sorry, this is like a comment aside, but I think it's super interesting, right? That even when companies are trying to be safe, oh, well, of course, we won't take race as a variable. But if you, well, at least in US, if you leave zip code as a variable, zip code is highly correlated with race, at least in
Mm-hmm.
the US. And then when you apply, when you're denying or approving applications, you actually are taking race into account. And
Right.
you, and if you're doing it automatically, well, like I can't, well, I can imagine worse uses of UI, but this is pretty much up there or down there, depends how you look.
Yeah.
Um, so in our case, like in our approach to QA, it's very much collaboration between machine and the human. Like we have this idea of smart queue, right?
Hmm.
So we rate all conversations, but then we bring interesting conversations for a human
Yeah.
review, right? So in
Yes.
order to coach an agent, a human has to create coaching moments and
Hmm.
understand what they mean and how the agent could do better. And we even, like, actually, one thing that so far is getting really, really, really good kind of reactions, we call them reasons to review. So you get to a conversation in the queue and it says, oh, look, customer asked for a supervisor, customer expressed extreme frustration, customer expressed the feeling of unfair treatment.
Right.
The machine, I always can make a mistake. Not I know, like the product is the machine, right? It can make a mistake.
Right.
Before it becomes a judgment, a human subject matter expert should review it and provide some kind of context.
Yeah, that is excellent. That is one of my favorite things in the world at the minute. I think that's from an effective QA program point of view, that is just the most helpful thing because it does take away a lot of the labor. It does take away a lot of the effort that you need to make, and it allows people to do effective QA even if they're a team lead and they have a million other things to be doing, a million other things on their plate. They don't spend their entire day just doing reviews. Um, this just opens up a whole new playing field, I would imagine.
Absolutely, yeah, because people talk about how to scale quality programs
Hmm.
and how to use like well actually this is like first time we talked, right? Like I kind of asked you like, well, so like how do you start your engagements with your clients, right? And I remember your answer. Like the first
Hmm.
thing when you start a quality program is understand what quality means to you,
Yeah,
which actually back
absolutely.
then really struck me as like, oh, I didn't think about it, but it's not obvious, right? Because what you define as quality depends on outcomes that you want,
Yep.
right? And actually, this is another thing where doing quality management through a lot of data analysis can help, right? Because you can start reasoning about
Yeah.
what's correlated with what, right? So this kind of when we were working on QA, right? It's like like our approach. I always kept expressing it as like outcomes over inputs and coaching over grades.
Hmm.
And outcomes over inputs, well, traditional scorecards have line items that you don't know if all of them are important or not. Did the
Right.
agent greet the customer by their first name? I mean, it sounds reasonable, but then you know what? It depends what you want, right? If there is an agent that figured out a even friendlier, more formal, less formal to greet customers, and you see that conversations are going well, well, I mean, unless they like offending them,
Yeah.
great, more power to you.
Yeah, this is one of the examples that I love to use when it comes to this conversation is um, a bank assuming that the way that customers want to be communicated with is very button up because it's a financial service and people think that money equals seriousness. So we have to be very serious, very formal, very um, and then through a process of doing QA and looking at how customers actually respond to the way that they're being communicated with and testing things out in terms of, what happens if we use a more informal approach and what happens if we use um, someone's first name rather than sir, madam, last name, and the outcomes of that being so positive that it's like, oh, hang on, our assumption of what quality is supposed to look like is actually failing the customers. So it's not connecting with the customers the way that we thought it would. And I think that's the power of QA in that sense.
I
Um,
love this example. Yeah, I mean, I really I mean, I really love this example because and how would you know if a particular tone is correlated with success? Well, first of all, you need to be able to define what tone is:
mhm,
formal versus formal, friendly, warm, I don't know, confident, cheeky. Like there are so many
yeah.
options, right? Then you need to be able to correlate with outcomes, right? Because even to say what you just said, that well, look, uh, conversations where the agent used more friendly, informal tone ended up being more successful. Well, again, it's like opening another can of worms. Well, what do you mean successful?
Hmm.
Better CSAT, customers who had those conversations churned at lower rate, maybe, I don't know.
Hmm.
But being able to say that this input correlates with this outcome is very powerful. And without having a kind of very solid analytical platform, you have to rely on anecdotes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things also is if you look at which departments talk to customers, right? It's marketing, it's sales, and it's customer support or success, depending on if you have both of them. Now, marketing and sales, they come up with a language and personas on how to approach the target audience. So they set the expectation of this is how, when you're interacting with our brand, this is how we're going to talk to you. Now that entirely gets lost as soon as you get to customer support because those two don't tend to communicate very well with each other. But with a QA process, you can very easily take that information from marketing, um, maybe even train an AI to recognize that kind of language and then pose the question of did the customer support person also adhere to the same kind of communicating, so the entire experience from being brought in as a potential customer to being an existing customer and needing help is exactly the same.
Yes, and this is also an example of all the learnings that you obtain in CX,
Hmm.
specifically through the quality program. They should not be limited to training agents better and coaching them, right? Because
Right.
uh, it's actually a thing that like I hear consistently, right? Like we in CX and specifically in QA, we know what customers like, we know what they don't like.
Yeah.
Just our voice is not always heard outside of CX,
Yeah.
right? Like an example that well, I actually heard, like we in CX know that customers keep complaining about our refund policy. We know that.
Yeah.
We trying to tell it outside of CX, but that's kind of anecdotes, right? If we can show a solid report, then we will be heard.
Right. Yeah. Show us the data and then exactly. This is why I keep saying to people that the QA's job is to tell stories. It's not so much the, oh, I'm gonna show you a graph and show you an increase or decrease in a certain metric. It's yes, you're a collector of the data and you need to be able to read the data, but then you need to be able to explain the context to the rest of the company, not just to customer support, but to marketing and to product and to development to indicate this is what's going on, this is what actually happening. Um, so you mentioned CSAT. Now you know that I have opinions
We do, yes.
about CSAT. How do you see this? How do you see CSAT um, position within QA?
Well, so yes, I know your opinion about CSAT. They very much kind of agree with mine.
Hmm.
But it's like anytime somebody criticizes something, right? There is this thing, well, great. So you bring like propose an alternative, right?
Yep.
Because like we understand that CX departments want to, like they do ask the question, so how did it go? It meaning the
Yeah.
conversation, particular topic, conversation by a particular agent, you can't get into the head of the customer. So asking a survey, that's something that people have been done for, well, dozens and dozens of years. Um, Converting it to a number, you do want to convert it to a number.
Right.
So I'm just saying that, like, as much as I have reservations about CSAT, it has its uses, right? It's almost like um, no, well, it's knowing what it's important to have a number. It's important to understand what you use this number for. So, for example,
Yep.
using CSAT as the absolute metric for giving people bonuses or firing them is a mistake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because now you have to isolate, like, well, if somebody is unhappy, are they unhappy about something that I own or about the product or about the policy?
Yeah.
Um, I think it's like, well, I know it's not a very satisfying answer, I think, but you need to use several data streams. For example, like so like in our platform in Loris, we have this idea of CQ, conversational quality. It's
Hmm.
basically or it's like a 1 to 5 star rating for every conversation. Now, what it means is how well did this conversation go from point of view of the customer.
Hmm.
I think, if you don't mind, I think it's very kind of general concept, right? Because like you can almost like create several paths how a customer support conversation can go. Like something that I call golden path is what you want all your conversations to be, right?
Hmm.
Customer presents a problem, asks a question, there is some negotiation, agent gives an answer. The customer confirms, yes, thank you, it helped me, I'm happy, tada, bye. Okay, that's
Yeah.
the golden path. Well, we wish all conversations work well like
That,
that, right? But of course, the absolute opposite of it, it's well, I call it rough landing. So it's where the exactly opposite happened, right? So the conversation ended with
hmm.
the customer being unhappy, resolution is missing, and we're kind of done, right? And then there are
Yeah.
probably, you could imagine, several paths, but it's very interesting that there is only finite and small number of paths a customer support conversation can take. Based on that path and some other markers, we assign like 1 to 5 stars. And we do it on pretty much all conversations.
Right.
Now, is it valuable? Well, I'm obviously very biased. I think it's extremely valuable. It's a technology behind it, and it's, intuitively, it's like when people see it, they like it. Would
Right.
I want somebody to hire and fire people based on this one? Absolutely not. Because again, you don't know if it's because of the agent, if it's because of the product policy. Like of course, I can be the best possible agent, but if I get mostly conversations about refunds, and we have a pretty restrictive refund policy, well, I will end up with 1 and 2 star conversations at
Yeah.
no fault of my own.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's absolutely, yeah, I think that that kind of reinforces the point I was making earlier, where it's like you need to know the context, you need to know the story behind it. And it doesn't matter if that's on an individual level or if that's on a team level or even a division level, right? If the team is tanking collectively, there's going to be a story behind that. And you can look at the data and go, well, CSAT has dropped by 5% over the past 3 months for this particular team. What is going on? It's very easy to say, well, the team might be just dysfunctional and not working really well together, or it might be no, this team was retasked to take on the most difficult questions because they are very highly technically skilled, and that's where the reviews are coming from. So yeah, the context and the storytelling, I think, is one of the more elemental parts of QA. And I really appreciate the fact that Loris allows you to do that, and then that it's proactive in handing you that context. I think that's very clever. One thing I wanted to know is when Loris, obviously, one of the starting features, the thing that got Loris started, is that it acts like a kind of a butler, right? Where it proactively hands um, things to say to the agent rather than to the customer. So you're not, as the customer, you're not directly chatting with a chatbot. You are talking to a human, but that human is supported by an AI.
Mhm.
If that is the case, why then do you need QA?
So you refer to, like, we have one of our features, right? We called it Agent Assist. Now we're actually
Yeah.
calling it Agent Copilot.
Hmm.
Uh, I think
Love
it's a
that.
better name for this. Whereas an agent is having conversations, AI shows suggestions what to say, and
Hmm.
based both on effective communication and empathy, and on kind of correctness of answers configured by the clients. Um, why do we need the supervision? Because it depends on the topic, right? So actually, it's very important in support, and anytime machines and humans collaborate in work environment, the most tough decision is what work is going to machines and what work goes to the humans. When we first talked about like what judgments of ChatGPT you can rely on, it's
Hmm.
actually right. So imagine that you have a topic that is relatively easy and not emotionally charged. I mean, this
Hmm.
is perfect for throwing it into a chatbot or or some kind of autoresponder, right? Great. You lower the costs. The customer doesn't have to talk to anybody. Perfect. But
Right.
if you try to do the same thing, configure a chatbot flow on a topic that is either emotionally charged, requires a lot of negotiation, or just very complex, instead of saving money and helping customers, you're going to be doing probably exactly the opposite.
Right.
Right. So it's really knowing which conversations require human in the middle and which don't.
If the agent is supported by the AI, if the person gets handed the things to say based on the sentiment reading, you would assume that the majority of their work is going to be of stellar quality because it's relying on the AI rather than human interpretation, which can be much more flawed. I'm curious to see if it adds additional challenges for the agent, right? I can imagine that rather than becoming easier, the job might actually become much harder because there's a lot more thinking involved that you have to do when you're being assisted. Is
Oh,
that?
this is a great question. And I actually think that how it relates to QA, it can be integrated, right? Because the
Hmm.
output quality assurance is usually coaching. Now you can do coaching, well, like kind of like we usually do it, like let's say weekly one-on-one between team lead and the agent. We're reviewing some kind of coaching notes. Uh, that's what I mean. It's definitely valid, right?
Hmm.
But imagine being able to scale this coaching by creating suggestions that some kind of agent assist tool will
Yeah.
show to them. That's even better. Now, whether it makes the job more complicated or not, I think nobody likes to be, well, people in general don't like to be told what to do.
Hmm.
If this AI agent assist technology becomes my auto boss, that probably makes my job less pleasant.
Right.
However, if it becomes my assistant, my apprentice, so to speak, that's much more valuable,
Hmm.
right? And by the way, with large language models and ChatGPT, this is another pattern. The best use cases for it as use cases that involve that technology acting as an assistant or a drafter. Anytime, well, you write blog posts, right? So
Hmm.
sure, sorry for, but I can pretty much safely assume that every time you're starting a blog post and you're in front of an empty screen,
Oh, that's the worst. That's the
exactly,
absolute
yes,
worst.
exactly, yes. So um, something like ChatGPT, you can have a brainstorming session. Hey, how would you start this? Give me a
Yeah.
couple of ideas. It's not, don't write it for me, right? Because that, but be my drafter, assistant, I don't know,
Yeah.
apprentice, right? So if the agent starts seeing this agent assist technology as, oh, I would have said it anyway, but you basically like you automated my brain, right? Like I was about
Got you.
it was at the tip of my tongue or tip of my fingers, right? And you started writing it for me. Now
Perfect.
I'm not ruled by some kind of robot overlord, right? But it's no, it's my cute robot assistant, kind of a drafter that just runs around and does things for me.
Yeah, I can imagine that makes the agent buy-in for something like this a lot easier. And to that end, I wanted to ask another question. Um, you mentioned earlier on in the conversation, coaching versus grading. Can you shed a little bit of light on that particular difference?
In QA today, we
Hmm.
usually produce a grade for an agent. And then every QA process, every QA tool has this feature that I know I have really trouble talking about calmly. Dispute the grade, right? Because to
Hmm.
me, it's kind of I really have problem with that. Like we're all grown-ups here. Like
Yeah.
we work, like we're in a team. We're trying to do something. Like we're trying to serve customers. We're trying to hit business goals, and suddenly grades, disputing grades, and it's
Yeah.
like throws us back into high school at best, or maybe even before high school.
Hmm.
Then you're saying, well, it's like -5 points for not addressing a feeling here, or -5 points about for like a greeting by last name and not first name.
Yeah.
It's very, I don't know. I think it's very childish, right? Now, I
Yeah.
understand now, as all just like with CSAT, if you're a manager, you will say, well, cute, but I need a number. So did this agent do better or worse since last week, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think I have like perfect answer for this, right? But if a team can work with a culture of we are trying to be better together, we are learning from each other, we are learning from our past selves,
Hmm.
then the output of QA is effective coaching, not saying that, well, okay, this week you did 2 points better or 2 points less
Yeah.
than last week. And by the way, how to do coaching is it's like half science, half art, right? Which we like when for our product, we actually did quite a lot of research, and actually one of our product managers, we were lucky because he was like super interested in coaching for years, how to do effective coaching. Like just like with AI, we said that
Hmm.
no, people don't like to be told what to do. If you're coaching me and
Right.
you're saying, "Oh, Eugene, you said, you did this, you should have said that." Just by you saying that, even if I agree with you saying that is likely, like, make me into a kid again, and just
Defensive.
intuitively,
Yeah.
no, no, I did, no, no, I did okay. No, you're not going to tell me what to do, right?
Hmm.
It's just, it's a human nature, right? So how to organize a coaching session where the coach and the coachee are not, so to speak, on the opposite parts of the table, but on the same side of the table, where it feels
Yeah.
like we are working together on getting better, is very important, because otherwise all this coaching time will be wasted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe um, it's very easy for people to look at another human and go, who are you to tell me whether or not I am doing my job right? Like, who gives you the right to determine whether or not, unless you have a very specifically defined, documented outline of what that quality looks like for you with very, very deep down specific levels of information, you're not gonna you're not gonna mitigate that feeling with agents, right? Whereas if you have an AI which is constantly learning and adapting to new information that it's gotten, that is an objective opinion, right? Or an objective, more of a fact than an opinion.
Yes. Now, well, as long as humans are involved, obviously there is still nothing will be completely objective. But like, well, like no, I was saying that we have those like reasons to review, basically interesting situations that happened that we bring up.
Hmm.
So let's say that the customer, okay, there is a marker or like reason to review. Customer reported the feeling of being lied to. Okay. So
Interesting.
let's say we can, coach or the technology can surface up to the agent. Well, look, in this conversation, at this message, the customer expressed feeling of being lied to. Now that's objective.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that you lied to the customer. That's not at all what I'm saying. But now, being on the same side of the table, you and I, coach and coachee, let's look at that. What
Yeah.
happened with that? Was it something that I said? Was it something that our company promised to the customer in an ad?
Hmm.
Was it something that we said in the email that we sent them after, like in a receipt? Right,
Right.
but again, it's like we together try, almost like in a game-like fashion. Well, let's replay this and see if we could hit the ball better.
One of the things that I tell my clients is that the thing that I aim for is service-led management
Mm,
rather than top-down. Rather than me saying, "Well, this is what I need you to do, and this is what I want to see in results, and this is my opinion." Da 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 da. What I would like to see from a management perspective or even the QA perspective is not so much we're going to find exactly what you've done wrong in your work, because that feels punitive. That feels like I'm being graded in high school, like you said. Instead of that, look for how can I, as someone who can make these things happen for you, how can I support you best? What things do I need to know about you, about the work that you do, about the environment that you're in, that don't allow you to be the best performer you could be? So rather than explaining it as you do not grasp this material properly, you can go, huh, I think we may have lacked proper training in this specific area for you. That is something that we need to fix. And building that relationship between management or QA or a combination of both and the individual contributors, I think is one of the main purposes for doing at least performance-led QA.
I like it a lot because in this case, like you as an agent, kind of you have to deal with particular reality. Now,
Yeah,
and this reality being customers on the other end of the conversation, and
right.
they can be challenging, they can be difficult, they can be angry. Um, so the coach, like me, the coach, talking with you about how to help you being the best version of yourself. I mean, that's much better than this punitive. You
Yeah,
you should have done X and not Y.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Oh, that's yeah. I love talking about QA with you. We've had many a conversation about this in the past. I think what Loris is doing with QA is absolutely wonderful. I'm looking forward to see how it grows over the next years. Um, One last thing that I wanted to touch on. I'm curious because Loris must have a customer support or a CX team on board as well. Do you guys have an internal QA process?
Great question. I think this is where there is a difference between, like, so some businesses are, particularly when they're consumer facing or when it's B2B, but B2B at scale, right? Like you have
Right.
like 1,000 to 15,000 small customers,
Hmm.
then it's more like consumer support,
Right.
right? In our case, like a client gets like account managers, right? So it's very white glove personal relationship
Hmm.
where like we don't, like there are no tickets, right? It's really like, you basically like, I see our Slack. I know that our clients are invited to our Slack with their account managers,
Yeah.
right? And it's ongoing conversation.
Hmm.
Um, so no, we don't have QA because I think QA applies more to this kind of scalable CX.
Okay.
Although again, I just don't know how we do it. Yeah.
It might be interesting to take a look at it because I think from everything that we've talked about, right? It's about making sure that everyone who has a customer facing job communicates in the same way. How do you know that your account managers are communicating the same in the same fashion as your marketing would like to see, or the C-level, C-suite would like to see them being communicated with? Might be an interesting thing to think about, even with the account managers.
Oh, this is super interesting. Yeah, and in this case, like, well, I love startups. I mean, Loris is still a startup,
Yeah.
like a growing one, but still. Um, and one of the most beautiful things that you get in a startup is this kind of very unified team culture, right? Like, so for example, like for
Right.
me, like I'm in product. For me, people that do CX and account management are not somehow behind some kind of wall, right? Like we
Right.
always talk. So, and there is this cross pollination of, well, how we talk, what we say, what are the problems, which is like when a team can work like that, it's so satisfying.
I recognize that because I have had that experience as well from being in a very small team, and everyone knows each other and everyone knows what other people are working on. I've also had the experience because I was with one company for a little less than 7 years, and I saw that go from relatively small to really big. And I think if we had started that process when everyone knew each other and everything was clear, it would have made the progression into a big team, like hundreds of people big, where it's impossible to know everyone and to keep track of what everyone is doing. It made that transition that much easier because we started when it was clear, or we should have started it when it was clear, rather than now it's all muddled and everyone has an opinion and no one knows where exactly the beginning of the string is.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, just it's a thought. I thought it was an interesting
Absolutely,
topic
yeah.
to chat about. Um, I think I've run out of specific questions. Are there any questions that you would like to ask me
Uh,
since we're here.
so yes, absolutely. So we talked a lot about QA, right? And
Hmm.
like one theme that I always see in CX organizations is that unlike in more mature traditional industries or kind of domains, um, roles and titles so unpredictable, right? Like,
Yeah,
when you talk about like, well, QA versus CX operations versus
yeah,
like, I can like, rattle off like dozens of different role names. And
yeah.
so, well, you understand what I'm talking about, right? So my question to you, like, how do you see, is this gonna somehow settle down? Is this gonna gel? Or is this just the nature of CX?
Um, that's a good question. Obviously, I'm not. I can't tell the future. Um, what if I could? I think it's going to gel at some point. I think it's going to set at some point. I think the freedom of determining your own job title or just giving it a random name, it's fun when it starts, but we have to remember that the whole SaaS idea of SaaS is relatively new. So we're still, as a species, figuring things out. And I think the novelty at some point is going to wear out because it's going to be a lot harder for people to find, even for me. I mean, I am a QA specialist, or a communication analyst, but that's a job that didn't really exist 5 years ago. I'm one of the first ones. Um, and I might have been in the industry for a long time, but never under that specific title. So my job suggestions on LinkedIn, for example, are non-existent because there are no jobs. Yeah, there's QA in development or product, but that's not what I do. So yeah, I do think it's going to settle at some point because people are going to run into more problems than the freedom is giving them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But that again, that's me. I don't know. We might as well just be really happy, all of us, with the freedom and not give a hoot about job titles anymore. It's possible.
That
Who
that
knows?
that would be pretty good. That would be pretty good as well. Yes.
All right, Eugene, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me. I hope at some point we come back and do it again, maybe when the QA feature in Loris is a bit more progressed. I'd love to hear more about it. And
Absolutely. Am I allowed a little plug?
You absolutely may. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm extremely excited about what we do at Loris, specifically about QA, right? And well, the our QA feature already is out, but
Hmm.
in the next 1 to 2 months, we're expecting so many exciting developments where like our goal is not to be another QA tool.
Right,
Our goal is to truly transform QA operation
right.
into highly analytical, scalable, full visibility, uh, kind of value providing thing. So I very much encourage you to visit just Loris.ai, and see what's coming. And I think you're gonna be happy.
Well, I mean, I will definitely keep an eye on Loris because I feel it's one of the more exciting platforms in the industry at the minute. Um, you heard it. If you want to know more about Loris, you go to Loris.ai. I will make sure to put that in the description of the video as well. Eugene, again, thank you so much, and you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Ines. It's been fun. Thank you. Have
Thanks.
a great day. Thanks.
Bye.